Well, it looks like summer is well and truly here. And I've got bare feet walking on the grass. It's a lovely sensation. I thought today that I would see whether it's possible to arrange a lovely arrangement, a vase of flowers, not quite a vase. I'm going to use a glass compote. And while I'm here, I'm just checking out the other bits of greenery I've got growing down from the fencing along here. We used to have a philodendron here, which was really highly scented in the evening. It's white flowers, and in fact I need some philodendron for the next project I'm going to be making in my Julie and Julia, the flower edit project. I think I might have to substitute something. And over here, can you see my peonies just wafting around here? They are just about to burst into bud, and the advice is that you should cut your peonies for bringing indoors as cut flowers when they're at a marshmallow stage. And as I'm gently touching all of these, they do feel really, really hard, like golf balls. There's probably one that's slightly at that marshmallow stage. So bare feet on the grass is fine, but it's not quite so much fun on the stone of my patio. So I'm going to put on my gardening clogs. Hello and welcome. I'm Julie from Julie Davis Flower Workshops and Flower Start, the online flower arranging classes. So this is the little glass compote I was telling you about. Clear glass with like a bobbly edge to it. And I actually bought this from a garden centre in Belgium when I went to a flower arranging show in Belgium. In the autumn last year. So if you're interested in finding out more about my trip to a European garden centre, I will try and remember to leave the link to that video, and also the link to the flower show as well, the flower festival. And if I forget to do that by any chance, let me know in the comments and I will make sure that I amend the description. So while we're here, I'm having to stand to this. Hello, Joan. How are you, Joan? I'm having to stand just to one side a little bit today, because if I stand over here, the sun is coming right down over my eyes. So I'm just a little bit offset, but it does mean that you get to see my garden. I'm just looking at seeing what it is that you can see in the camera. So if there's anything you want to know, give me a shout and I will try and tell you what it is behind me. So let's get started. So if you enjoy these kind of videos, I would love it if you subscribe to my channel and even shared the video with a like-minded friend. Oh, thank you, Jen. It's looking particularly nice in the sunshine, isn't it? And my husband said today, and he came in, he finished doing sort of his morning tour of the garden and titivating as he went. And he said, I do like the garden at this time of the year. And I remember from previous years, the late spring, early summer is his favourite time for being in the garden. My favourite time is a little bit later in the month when the peonies are actually in full bloom, which normally for us is the May half term. So half term is coming up next week, and I think the peonies are going to be a little bit late. Quite often if we go away for the school holiday, the peonies are just about to come out when we leave, and then we come back and they've all gone over. We do have another, a red peony. The tall one is a coral charm, and we have a shorter one, and as far as I can see, that's only got one flower on it. So I think perhaps it may well have been smothered by the other plants that seem to be growing up quite high. I mean, if I stand next to them, you know, they're practically at shoulder height with me. The ground's a bit higher though there, so they're probably at least underarm height, higher than waist height anyway. So what I've done today is I thought the project for today would be to see if I could arrange going foam free, because we like a bit of a challenge and we want to be more environmentally friendly. And of course the challenge for all of this series of live classes, live videos from my garden, was to set myself the challenge of whether I could create a bunch of flowers right away throughout the year. And I will say that we have been successful. Perhaps just a few weeks at Christmas time things were a little bit dry, but of course that was when I showed you some Christmas flower arranging techniques. So I think when we come up to next month, the 21st of June, which is that's probably, is that 4 weeks away, 5 weeks ago, we will be at our 1 year anniversary. And actually, I'm thinking about it now, I've challenged myself to arrange a bunch of flowers right the way through the year, which ties in quite nicely with the project I'm also doing, and that is to recreate all the flower arrangements in Julia Clement's first book, Fun with Flowers. Now I particularly chose her first book because she wrote it in the 1950s, and that was before the advent of flower foam. In her later books, she's mainly foam free, but she talks about how new and exciting the flower foam will be. And of course, these days now, we realise how damaging it is to the environment, which is why I've chosen her first book. So I think it's quite good, actually, if you give yourself a little challenge like that, that by the end of the year, I'll have made 86 arrangements foam free, and it'll really start to hone my skills, and then I'll be able to share my hints and tips more widely about how I create these arrangements going foam free. So I have picked my herbs already. So the reason I did that was because I didn't want to pick them. Actually, they look quite attractive in there. I've just put them in this little container here as a means of putting them in a bucket, so they could rest and relax and take up water. They do look quite nice, just sort of plonked as they are. But I specifically cut them first thing this morning because I didn't want to be picking them late in the day, over the midday sun. It's not, massively hot at the moment, but it's just not very good for your flowers. You need to pick them either in the cool of the morning or the cool of the evening. I like to do it in the morning because in which case they've had a full day of sun the day before, and then they've had 12 hours of comparatively cooler weather to rejuvenate themselves. So I've had those sitting in my container. What I did pick was some bay. We have a huge bay tree in our garden, and I got suckered in with the bay because I picked it and it had the beautiful new growth on it. So the bay leaf, as you all probably know, especially if you're a cook, comes with a nice leathery leaf, quite a dark colour, and as I'm playing with it in my hand, it's starting to release the fragrance. And it had some wonderful new growth, a bright green leaf, and it had a slight, turned into a pendulous droop, because the new growth of any of your plant material in the garden needs to harden off before it will withstand being cut and put in a vase. And sometimes that can be surprisingly late in the year. And I would say, if you want a rule of thumb, I don't think I would put any pick greenery, new growth greenery, out of my garden until the end of June to guarantee that it wasn't going to flop. And for this, I can't even rejuvenate really by cutting those bits out, because I'm just going to be left with the stubby, woody bits of the bay and not the lovely arching pieces that I wanted. Now, the second slight issue is I'm going to go foam free, so I'm going to put chicken wire into my container. And a question for you: when you put quick chicken wire into your containers and receptacles, how do you fix the chicken wire in place? Do you tie it with string? Do you remember we did that when I did the arrangement where I used my champagne bucket with the handles on it, and I tied some string around the handles? That was quite handy. But there's no handles on this glass jar, so what am I going to do? Scrunch up my chicken wire and then put tape across it, possibly? I could do that, but again, it's a bit of plastic. All I'm going to do is take it away, put it in the bin when I finish. And also, the tape won't stick to my container. It's got this knobbly texture all over it. And if you are using tape, you need to make sure your container is nice and dry, and it sticks best to smooth-sided containers. If you've got something that's been a cut glass or a pressed glass that's been cut, or like me, that's got all these knobbly bits all over it, it's not going to stick properly. So I've got to come up with another way of firmly securing my chicken wire in place. So off to the side somewhere should be some chicken wire. I don't quite know where it's gone to. I think it must have rolled off the table. Chat amongst yourselves while I try and find it. Oh no, where's it gone to? Where's it gone? Where's it gone? You're going to be a little bit stuck without it. Right then, those are the flowers I was showing you. That's my pot, that's my dead bit. I've even got my sunglasses on the side, and I can't side to my chicken wire. I had a nice big ball of chicken wire. I may well have left it on the kitchen table. Let me go and have a look. It's not on the kitchen table. I'm going to crouch down. Is it underneath the table? Oh, it's like a game of hide and seek. Right then, I know exactly where I've got some more chicken wire. This will be quite interesting to see how far away my microphone works. Now, the dilemma now is I had a bit of a tidy up today, so I did have some chicken wire lying on my kitchen windowsill, and I've put it away. And you bet your bottom dollar, as soon as I go out and find this and bring in my replacement piece, it'll just appear, won't it, on the side? So chat amongst yourselves, ask me some questions, and then when they ping up, I'll come back and answer them. I'm going to dash indoors and go and get it. So here we go. I'm through the kitchen. I'm opening the door into my workshop, putting on the light in my workshop, running to my little stash of things. Back again. Okay, I am back. And no, the chicken wire hasn't miraculously appeared. That sometimes happens, doesn't it, when you mislay something? You go out and find it, and then it just seems to be sitting there. So I've got my piece of chicken wire. I can't use the tape to fix it. I can't use the string to fix it in place. Now I think the dog wants to come out and join me. So how am I going to fix this in place? So this is a piece of chicken wire. I've taken it off a reel, and what I tend to do is I make it into a cylinder. Gristlinia. I would say, I'm not sure about growing it because you know that I'm not a gardener, but I would say that Gristlinia is a handy greenery, a foliage for your flower arranging. I think the answer would be that you need to look up what soil conditions Gristlinia likes, and then establish whether you've got the right soil conditions and also the right aspect. So for us, we have got a south-facing garden, but because we've got so many trees in it, it's not a particularly, it's not a baking hot south-facing garden. And I can, over time, my husband has tested the soil to get its pH. He understands, we don't have a particularly clay soil. It's not particularly sandy. It's sort of a halfway house. But of course, it depends on your individual conditions. So I think the test would be research what the growing conditions are favoured by Gristlinia, and then establish what growing conditions you've actually got at home. And this is quite often when my husband gets not annoyed with me, but he is frustrated by me because, for instance, I'll be watching a gardening show saying, oh, can I have one of those in the garden? Should we get one of those? And he says, no, it's not going to work in our garden because we don't have the right conditions for growing that particular variety. So what I've done here is I have rolled up my chicken wire and sort of tied all the loose ends together and got myself a sausage shape, and then I've crunched the ends down together, and I've ended up with something that is slightly football shaped, and it is too big. If you notice, it's too big to fit into my container, so I'm going to have to scrunch it down a little bit more. And as I do that, I'm just going to make sure that I tuck in the cut ends of the wire, because I don't want them scratching me and I don't want them scratching the sides of the container. So I can just gently, now I don't want to scrunch it so far down that I've just got a solid ball of the chicken wire, because I need to have some holes to put the stems of my herbs in. But of course my herbs are quite thin stems, so I don't mind a little bit of shrinkage with the holes, because this is a 2-inch gauge wire, so each of the holes is 2 inches wide. But I don't want to scrunch it right the way down because I won't be able to fit anything in place. So you'll see there that as I let go, it bounces back out of the container. So one way that I can fix my chicken wire in place seamlessly, hopefully, is, you probably can't see on the screen there, but this container has the slightest rims around it. So if you are looking at containers you've already got at home to use for chicken wire, my advice is, number one, choose something that's got handles on it, because then you can attach with a string. Or perhaps, if like me, you love going to the charity shop, or you've got boot fairs or church sales, that kind of thing, instead of just being drawn to the bright, sparkling new container that you're seeing, have a little look at it and just think, is this giving me what I actually need to go foam free. And a good container to get is one with just a little lip on it, because what you can do is where I scrunch the chicken wire down, if I then sort of pull a bit of the chicken wire out, I can then bend it over and loop it over the edge of the container and bend it back in place. So can you see there that I've attached it on this side, but this side here is still rolling out. So I take a bit of the wire over the top and bend it round and go round. I've gone round four times. I think I'm going to go a fifth time just to make sure that it's nice and secure. So we will have to see whether this works. So I guess the test of seeing whether it's holding in place is to turn it upside down, and if it doesn't fall off, it is firmly secured. But you have to bear in mind that the plant material, although my herbs are lightweight, once I get them in the container, are they going to be heavy? Are they going to want to pull the mechanics out of the container? So what you can do is then take a piece of wire. So this is mossing wire, the kind of wire that you would put the moss on a Christmas door wreath with. And what I can do is, if I go round the edge of my wire, a little bit of sewing, and who doesn't love a little bit of craft with their flower arranging? If I go around the edge of the wire, in and out with my reel wire, I can stitch. It's like I'm doing a drawstring. I'm doing a little running stitch around the edge of the wire, keeping it low underneath the ridge of the container. And then when I get back to the beginning, I can twist two ends of the wire together and then tuck the cut ends back into the container. And then what that means is that next time I want to use this particular little glass compot, I will have a made to measure, so I'm cutting that off, a made to measure little bit of chicken wire which will fit specifically this container. So I can still take it off to give it, I like to rinse mine through with a little bit of boiling water when I've made a drink. It's quite nice, to have a bit of wire that fits individual containers. So if I was arranging flowers in a mantle vase, a windowsill vase, you'd need a much wider, bigger piece of wire. And here it's all quite neat. I know you can't really see that, but it's it's quite a small piece of wire. And of course you could always scrunch it up, expand. If you pull it out, you can make it bigger, and if you scrunch it down a little bit, you can make it smaller. But just don't scrunch it too tightly, because otherwise you aren't going to have any holes for arranging your flowers in. I'm still thinking, where on earth has that piece of chicken wire gone? It's obviously blown away in the wind, although I did move my box several times to make sure my camera angle was right. So it may well be it's hiding under the box, and the open edge is on the underside, filling up with water using another charity shop find. I must say, this is really useful. It's a tea Lara, and I bought it for £3 from the charity shop, and when you check online they are selling for £27. So I was using this in the summer as my herbal tea teapot, and I did actually make some iced tea which I kept in the fridge in this container. But what we're finding it really helpful for, it's almost using it like a watering can. And we have one of these kettles now that just heats a cup of water at a time. So I fill it up from the tap in here, put it into the kettle, and it sort of saves taking the whole unit to the tap to fill it up. So a really, really useful find. But like anything you do charity shop shopping, it is just a total fluke whether you find things. And of course I wasn't looking for a teapot that day. I just thought it was a nice glass piece that I knew I could make use of. So in terms of herbs, I've told you that I've got some bay, and I'm not going to use the bay. So what other herbs do you think I've got in my container? Did you spot anything when I showed you before? Now, the yellow flowers, clearly they're not herbs, they are buttercups. But I thought, with this very naturalistic cottage looking style of the herbs, I thought it might look quite nice with a bit of colour in it. So I thought, why don't I include some of the buttercups? So So I don't know whether you're doing No Mow May, which is the campaign by Plant Life to encourage us not to close mow our lawns during the month of May, to allow the wildflowers to grow, and then that helps as a food source for the butterflies and the bees and all those nectar-seeking natural creatures. And across the other side, I've got purple. So purple and yellow, good combination because they're opposite sides of the colour wheel. So this is actually, you know what that is, don't you? It's a chive. So we have chives growing in the garden, and everything in our garden is put there for a reason, and basically the reason is for wildlife. So my husband would have looked at the life cycle of the chive, decided that it's appropriate for a certain kind of wildlife, and he would have included it. And in fact, I noticed the other day that he came home from the supermarket with a pot of chives. I thought, oh, I didn't realise that was on the shopping list. We had coriander on the list, but not chives. And I think he was telling me today, we went out for a walk, and he said the chives cost £1.15 for a pot of chives, which normally you would, cut from the pot and put in your salads or across your fish. And he said it was more cost effective to buy the chives in the supermarket as a culinary item, a rooted plant, than it was to go to the garden centre to buy chives. And I noticed he did have them turned out into a little terracotta pot, which was on the patio table, but he must have put them somewhere else in the garden. So the other things that I have got lemon balm. So this is what I first started making my homegrown herbal teas with last year. And if you're interested in finding out more about that, I'm pretty sure that I have got some videos about that in my Facebook group, Flowers Start World. So the Facebook group is free to join if you're on Facebook. And there are loads of videos. How many videos? Occasionally I count them up. There must be about 600 videos in there now. So you just need to scroll back to the summer months and you may well see me making a pot of herbal tea using my own homegrown herbs. Now this is gorgeous, and I think it's part of the joy of flower arranging, especially when you're arranging from your garden, that you have to go around your garden and look at it, really look at it, not just take it all in one go. And if you were watching videos back with me, in the early part of the spring, I just used to say, that's my garden, it's all green. But you have to go and look. And it's that point, you're stopping, you're giving yourself permission to go slowly, and you're stopping and you're looking and you're getting to know your garden intimately. So for instance, when I was deciding what I was going to do, the topic for today, I thought, I know I can do herbs, because I knew exactly where in the garden that the lemon balm was growing. And then I picked it, and of course as soon as you pick it or disturb the leaves, they give off a scent, and the scent on this is absolutely lovely. Really, it's like lemon sherbet, a sort of muted lemon sherbet, absolutely lovely. So that's what I'm going to put in first of all. So, and what I did is I cut as if I was pruning the plant, so I went right down to the base of the plant. I didn't just cut off the tops, but it's in all likelihood going to be too tall going in like that, so I will trim down to size. But what I do like at the moment, I don't know whether you're noticing on Instagram, there seems to be some absolutely amazing arrangements in the tiniest bowl ever. So as I'm here practicing with you in the garden, perfecting my skills, I thought I would channel that look as well. So as long as I keep the container topped up with water, the plant material won't die, but I will have to top up more regularly than if I'd had a bigger container, a bigger vessel of water. So I'm trying to, as I'm cutting, I'm trying to forget what's in my head, what I would naturally be inclined to do, and do something different. And sometimes that's nice if you are arranging flowers, that it can become quite repetitive if you always make the same thing in the same way. So the challenge is to do something that isn't your normal thing. So if you normally make petite arrangements, go big. And if you normally go big, try and do something small. Or think about your colours as well. If you're normally into vibrant colours, one day go just for whites and greens and just see how you feel about it. You may discover a brand new passion. So I am going to cut this down, and I'm going to go, just a little bit. I'm going to cut carefully though, because by cutting down here, I can then end up with 2 stalks. And what I'm thinking about here, you can see my brain whirring. Some of the leaves are a little bit nibbled, and I was thinking about whether I should take them off. I'm not going to take them off because I'm arranging this for my personal pleasure, and when it's finished, it's going to sit on my coffee table or in my living room. No one else is going to look at it apart from other members of my family. It's not being judged. This isn't the Chelsea Flower Show. And I just want to take pleasure from it rather than beating myself up that I haven't got the absolutely best quality plant material. If it really bothers me afterwards, I could go back in and pinch it off. But I think what you're going to end up seeing is just a green haze of plant material, and you're not going to notice that a few stems are being nibbled. Now, on the subject of Chelsea Flower Show, are you watching? So it's on all week. Did it open? Press day was yesterday, so that was when the Queen and the King visited, and then it's open to the public today all the way through to Friday. Saturday's the last day, and it's at 4 o'clock on Saturday. They ring the bell, and those exhibitors who are wanting to, I think they sell off the plants, and you see people, well, you see it on the news afterwards, don't you, people on the tube carrying great big huge things home with them. So let me know, are you watching on the TV? And if you are watching on TV, have you spotted any flower arrangements yet? I only caught I think I was doing something last night, can't remember what it was. I heard that it was on the telly. Sophie Rayworth was commentating, but I didn't actually sit and watch. So I think that might be my little treat for tonight. I may well put the red button on the telly and see what has been happening in Chelsea today. So I'm just taking the green from one side to the other. What I do like to do, it's sort of organised, it's not organised chaos, but it does look like organised chaos. In order that it isn't chaotic, what I do is I'm just working at the moment with my lemon balm. I'm not picking one of that, one of the other. It'll get intermingled in due course, but in order to just regulate things in my mind, the sort of little blueprint I got in my mind, I just use one lot of greenery and go through, and then when I finish with that, I'll come back with another one. And of course the beauty of using the chicken wire is that mechanics, what's holding the flowers in place, look invisible. There's none of this trying to put in more and more bits of plant material to cover up the green of your flower foam. And also it means I can retain this sort of light airiness. Sometimes when you do use flower foam, you're so busy covering up all the gaps that it can sometimes change the look of the piece that you want to, look of your finished piece. It can become too visually heavy. Instead of, a soggy bottom, Mary Barry is always telling us about, sometimes you can end up with a very heavy bottomed looking arrangement. So this lemon balm is slightly different. It's a little bit yellow in colour. I think that probably is because it's lacking in nutrients. So we've got lemon balm growing in the main bed around there, but it's also sort of seeded into a little bit of the garden wall. I'm trying not to go all the way around. I'm wanting a little bit, as I say, it to look different than I would normally arrange, but the same principles apply, that I still don't want to put any green leaves into the water because they will just fall off and rot off, and that will shorten the life of everything else. But I just wanted to get a slightly different shape to my normal way of arranging. So I will recut the end of there. That is a shorter piece in there. So you're looking at the back, it looks pretty much the same. Again, I'm tempted to put this there. Normally when I arrange flowers I go north, south, west, east. I'm trying to go long and, something looks a little bit different. So that is what it looks like. It just looks like a little bit of fresh green, doesn't it? So quite simple to do, and I would say don't get put off. You're not a florist. You may think that you don't feel that you're a flower arranger. Anybody who can cut a flower and put it in a vase is a flower arranger, and I would say just go for it. Don't be stifled by the rules of flower arranging. Just have a go, and the more you have a go, the more you practice, the more discerning your eye will be, and the more challenges you can put for yourself. So you might want to think about, you'll hear flower arrangers and florists talk about scale and proportion and balance and rhythm and all these technical words. But if you're new to flower arranging, forget it all. Just do what makes you happy. So next up I have got some woody stems of rosemary. So again, I have to take off the lip. It's a green because they're going to be in the vase and start rotting off. I roll that around in my fingers and the scent is just absolutely heavenly. So what's running through my mind now? What is running through your mind? Are you thinking, I wonder where she's going to put that? Where would you put it? Do I keep it on a single stem? So I've got one stem with 5 pieces coming off the side. Do I want it to arch out of the vase? Should I be jaunty because it's on a woody stem? Can I get it to sweep up the other way? Well, we are trying to do things a little bit differently. Shall I try and get an upward sweep? Now, what's going to happen if this doesn't want to stay upwards? It will just roll over on the side. Ultimately, you've just got to do what the plant material wants to do. But again, it's quite nice doing a shape that's slightly different to the shape I would normally make. So do I keep it there? And then I think, well, do I do a balancing one there? Or do I come out down the side to make it, you know, like a diagonal arrangement? I don't quite know the answer, if I'm going to be honest. So taking off those bits of green there. Now this plume of rosemary is slightly longer. The stems are slightly closer together, making it more compact. So what I think I might do, if I got the light and wispy up here, I might actually roll this over and put it in at the bottom. So it's the heavier material, the visually heavier materials are arching out of the vase at the bottom. I'm just wondering though whether it's going to be a little bit too big. So we will give it a fresh cut. I will wiggle it in, and if it doesn't quite look right, I can always take it out. Actually, what do you reckon? It does look like quite a solid line, doesn't it, coming out at the bottom there. Dare I not take it out of the vase, but I'm going to cut off one of the stems there to lighten it up a little bit. And then what I could do is then take off the green from the bottom and add it back in, but because I've cut it off, made it shorter, because this bit's going to go into the stem, it will just give me that second placement, and it just spaces out the material a bit more. So instead of the material being like that, quite heavy, it's sort of more open and flowing. So it still looks actually like one placement, but I split it into 2, and it just gives it a little bit of lightness. So I've talked about my bay. I'm going to get rid of that bay because it's no good to me. Oh, it would have been gorgeous though. Look, that's really, really, really droopy. This one isn't quite as bad. You can see that lovely sharp green. Now, shall I? I think as it's not drooped already, perhaps it will hold up. So I'm going to cut it to length, pull off the leaves that are going to be in the water. You're looking at the back there. I might put it in the back so you've got something to keep looking at. And in the event that, you know, later on this evening it has actually drooped, well, number 1, I've got it in the back of the arrangement. I might not notice it's drooped. And number 2 is that all I could do is do exactly what I did with the rosemary. And if I don't like it, rather than trying to pull it out because it might dislodge everything else, I could just go in and cut off the bits that are offending my eye. I could do that. But at the moment, it looks lovely and shiny and glossy, that bright, fresh green of the springtime. And then I've got some plumes. This is fennel. So this is actually a bronze fennel. It does look green, but it is bronze. You can see just the slightly darker pieces here. And when I made this into herbal tea last year, it gave me quite a shock because it turned purple. And it's got a lovely, lovely scent. Again, you just go around the garden. Do you do that? Go around the garden and sort of, without pulling the flowers, just running your hands through it. And it just releases this gorgeous aniseed scent. I do the same when I walk past people's gardens in the street, and just sort of stroke all the shrubbery in their gardens so I can get the scent wafting up into my nose. So a little bit like this. I'm just thinking it's sort of got the multi-leaved look of the rosemary. The rosemary is a bit more solid. This is a bit dainty. So I need to think about where I'm going to put it, because if you've got lots of stuff that's green in your vase, you want to be looking at the colour, because not all greens are green. You want to look at the texture. this is nice and soft and floaty. The leaves on the bay are quite leathery looking, and also the shape of the leaves as well. And don't put too much of like with like, 'cause otherwise it's the contrast that makes things show up. It'll get lost a little bit in the vase. I'm just wondering whether, light and dainty as this bit of fennel may be, whether it's not actually going to add anything to my arrangement. Let's have a look. So I'm having that plume. Can you see the plume there? Coming out at the front of my vase. And that's, again, I'm glad I put that in. It just reminds me when I'm doing circle around with my turntable that the plume at the front is the front. Sometimes when you're working, if you get where the front is, it sort of spirals round a little bit. And here, it's going to be too overwhelming, I think, to put that huge piece in. So what I might do, I reckon, I can cut this piece down. And look at that tufty tail. It looks almost like millet there, the decorative grass. Really, really compact. And when it grows, of course, it will open out. So I might put a little bit of that at the top there. I got 1, 2. That sounded like a duck just then. I don't know whether you can see, but at the bottom of my garden, we've got a circle of trees that are planted, and we have feeders for the birds, specific seeds to attract specific birds. I can now see a squirrel with his back legs on one tree and his front legs out like this, getting at the seeds. So if he overstretches, there's going to be a splat of squirrel in the background soon. And we've only just started getting squirrels in our garden. We've lived here for 25 years, I guess. And it's only been the last couple of years that we've actually got squirrels. So depends what your view of squirrels are. My husband thinks of them as being, the rats of the tree world. So he doesn't particularly want to encourage them, but they always look so cute, don't they, with those tufty tails. We've also got a fox in the garden. So we discovered the fox during the beast, a fox, during the Beast from the East. When was that? 2018, 3 years ago. And the reason we discovered that was because we were looking out of the bedroom window at the snowy garden, and our shed has a flattish roof, and there were a pair of foxes curled up on the roof, and of course we could see them because it was winter time. And just over the last few weeks in the evening time, when we're sitting in the living room and still, it's getting that time of night, it's not quite time to shut your curtains, and we have a fox that comes down here and does a circle of the patio and then goes back up again. And when I let the dog out in the morning, she goes and does her sniffing rounds, and she barks at the wood pigeons in the trees, and then she is quite clearly, I reckon, following the scent of the fox. So I've just got a little bit of light and fluffy going on there. Of course, you can't really see it against the background of the garden, but I will take a photograph against my plain background once I've got this indoors, and I'll post that on the community tab pages. So have you joined my membership group yet? So that is quite exciting. We've got some behind the scenes videos going on. You can watch my regular Monday videos without having to watch the adverts. I've set those advert free. And I'm going to start hosting my flower classes on the YouTube channel. So for $8.99 a month, you have one proper talk class a month, plus all the behind the scenes extras. So those of you who've been to Zoom flower class before, it's going to be on that same sort of model, me talking to the screen and you typing in any comments you've got. And then if you want help and support and feedback on your pieces, you're more than welcome to put the photographs in the Flower Start World group, and you can make it clear that you want some feedback, and we can give you some feedback. Here, plant identification. Can you tell what it is? This is feverfew. So it's the plant has it's got a little bit of black fly on it. It's a bit early in the season, it hasn't got its flowers out yet. So the flowers are the little daisy-like flowers, yellow centre, white petals, looks a bit like chamomile. And this one came from one of our builders. We had our wooden window frames. The window sills were rotten at the front of the house, and we had someone come round and he rebuilt the wooden window frames, which meant we didn't have to get replacement windows because we were able to retain the rest of the windows. And I think probably at some point while he was working for us, I'd come down with a massive migraine, and he said he suffered with migraines too, and he'd bring me a pot of feverfew, which really helped him. I tried it a few times, but let me tell you, feverfew tastes absolutely vile. It's really, really really bitter. I'm going to come to that question in a minute that I've just been asked, and I'm going to give you a jokey answer. So the advice is, if you do suffer from migraines, is that you have to take feverfew regularly, and because it tastes so bitter, the advice is to eat it in a Marmite sandwich. I love Marmite, but I think it's the strong taste of the Marmite disguises the disgusting taste of the feverfew. Personally, I rather stick with my migraine tablets, making sure I'm drinking loads and loads, making sure I'm sleeping properly, and I've just actually recently bought some magnesium tablets to sort of try and get over the migraine when I've had it. The question I've been asked is whether I've got a name for this arrangement, and I'm facetiously going to say, yes, she's called Sally. I don't have a name for it. I don't like to categorise things. And what I'm doing is, my view is that I've set myself a theme, so I'm making a flower arrangement of herbs. I've decided my mechanics are going to be foam-free, and I've plumped for the chicken wire. I've decided to use a little glass, visually lightweight container, which I've got a memory attached to. I quite like the sense of memory, which is very evocative of the, scent. Scent's supposed to be really good for memory, isn't it? Especially with people with Alzheimer's. So what would I call it? I don't know. What would you call it? I shall bounce the question back to you. It's sort of vaguely diagonal, free-flowing, loose arrangement. Loose as in the sense, you hear florists talking about loose, it doesn't mean it's insecure, it just means it's not compact, it's loose in style. So probably about time that I put this into the water. I would say that this isn't a contemporary arrangement. I would say that it was if a garden style arrangement. I would say contemporary for me. Contemporary in the sense, it's where definitions come into it. Contemporary means modern, so, and we think about, we're living our lives now, we're living contemporary times, aren't we? It's just a modern thing, but I would say this isn't modern in that sense. To me, contemporary can actually look quite old-fashioned, and contemporary would be twos of this and twos of that, very geometric, almost like a modern reinvention of perhaps something that we think about being ikebana, quite pared back. I would say this was, to me actually, it's quite old-fashioned, and that's the difficulty, isn't it? I'm not laughing at you, I'm laughing at myself, laughing with you. Because I find exactly the same thing. When I am looking on Pinterest, for instance, and I want to do an arrangement, I want to point someone in the direction of what we're going to be doing at class, for instance, and I can't find a photograph of the exact thing that I've done before. It's like everything you do online, isn't it? You're trying to find, they call it a long-tailed keyword search, isn't it? So you can put a long sentence in to find it. And I think perhaps us flower arrangers need to have our own search engine that can understand what we're talking about. So if I wanted to find this, a picture of this, similar arrangement on Pinterest, what would I put in? Well, again, over to you. What would you put into the search engine? So I would say, it's not a mantle vase, but I might say modern mantle vase arrangement, or foam-free arrangement, garden style flower arrangement. And of course it depends on what the person who's uploaded the photograph to Pinterest, for instance, has described it as. They would have had to put in a description of it. And if it's a flower arranger or a florist that's done it, this is starting to droop, but it's possibly because I've been talking for too long without being out of water. It makes it slightly harder because they haven't got that same technical know-how that those of you who are interested in flower arranging have got. I think that's drooping because it's been out of water too long. I'm going to put this piece back there and hide that other piece around the corner so it can revive. So I think probably if I was looking for something similar, yes, I might say foam-free garden style arrangement, something like that. So looking up close, so a question there about the rules that I use. I try not to use the rules. I think it can be really off-putting. If you're new to flower arranging, it's quite hard, isn't it? You're quite interested in flower arranging. You come to a class and you arrive and everyone's got a toolbox and everyone's got yellow handled scissors and they seem to know what they're doing magically. So I try to break that down. And when I first started going to flower class, I took a pair of kitchen scissors with me. You only need a pair of specialist scissors once you've broken your first pair of kitchen scissors, and then you discover you need something stronger. So, it depends. So perhaps it's like modern art of the time. I'm sure that those modern artists we think about may well have got, Tracy Emin, for instance, a local artist to us, modern art. But it may well be that when she went to art school, she learned all the classics. And you learn the way of doing it, and you know, I'm presuming here, I know nothing about art, but presumably you learn about the proportions of the face and how to suggest the lights coming in and all those other things. Well, I guess it's a bit like flower arranging. You can learn the basic shapes, and then I think the more confident you become, you start to break those rules and you're not quite so formulaically following that blueprint pattern because you are arranging your flowers more intuitively. So you can either come to it from there, that you may have done a college course, you may have got exams in your flower arranging, and you may be quite happy to continue in that vein, to arrange your flowers for pleasure, for church, for friends and all that kind of thing, but keeping to the style in which you were taught how to arrange flowers. You could come at it a different way, and I think probably where I've got to is, yes, I've done all my floristry training, I passed all my exams, and further down the line, I'm now blurring the lines between what I was formerly trained to do and what I enjoy doing most now. So I am arranging, breaking the rules in the knowledge that actually I do know what the rules are. So hence I understand how an arrangement's put together in terms of scale, rhythm, proportion, harmony, balance, that kind of thing. Equally, if we want to spread the good news about flower arranging, if you say you come to flower arranging, but you can only have 3 flowers, 5 flowers, and you have to have 3 different kinds of contrasting greenery, and don't forget your focal flowers, your transitionals, and your fillers. It's just the lingo can be quite off-putting if you don't know what all that jargon means. So I quite like it when people come to class, and they come because they just got an interest. You want to try a new hobby. They might not be, not particularly passionate about flower arranging, but they want to try something new, and a Wednesday at 10 o'clock suited them, da-de-da. And I think then the more you get into it, the more you want to understand about those principles and elements of floristry design. And then perhaps you will go on to want to learn all that background stuff. So you can either come to it here with all the information and fade out, or you come in as a hobbyist, but you sort of work that way. And you can then sort of move up this continuum of your flower arranging, whether you're going to do something absolutely by the book and, to create, a pedestal arrangement as if you were doing a college piece that was going to be assessed by your tutor, or whether you decide to see what you've got in your garden and to make something that gives you pleasure in the making, but also in the pleasure of the viewing it afterwards. So it just depends. It depends, I guess, why you do flower arranging. Are you doing it for pleasure, for payment, because you're on the church flower arranging committee, or do you just enjoy spending time out in your garden, growing a few flowers and learning how to arrange them? I don't think there's any right or wrong answer, but I don't do commercial floristry anymore, which is probably why I've stepped away from the true floristry in the sense of all those rules and regulations, and I've stepped away and I'm embracing more just the feeling that it gives me, the feeling of being immersed in nature, appreciating my garden more. And as we know, creative activity is so good for the brain, and it can ward off anxiety and depression and all those other things. And I do like to talk about my continuing flower arranging, because as well as it having the knowledge and no knowledge and sort of crossing over in the middle, I quite like the continuum of pure floristry flower arranging and craft at the other end, and I like blurring that as well. I do enjoy a little bit of the crossover between flower arranging and crafting activities. So I've got my greenery in, I've got the sunshine coming in, I've got a bit of flopping with my lemon balm. I think I may well be able to rescue the feverfew, but we'll have to, it needs to go back indoors and have a bit of cool and perk back up again. You can see it there. I'm not entirely sure that you can. So I've got a few flowers here. So I have got my, I'm laughing at my chives. Oh look, I've got 4 chives. So you know, if I was following a rule, I should have 3 chives or 5 chives or 7 chives, but I just picked 4. I like the chives as well because we do actually have alliums growing in the garden, so this is like the sort of younger, more naive little sister compared to the sophisticated alliums growing in the garden. Of course, they're all the same family. The reason I only stuck to 4 though was because, I mean, there's a bit of bindweed there. We've got a little patch of chives, but there aren't loads of flowers in there, so I didn't want to totally denude the whole garden. So quite often that's why I pick as well. I just pick what my garden gives me. I'm not a flower farmer, I'm not a gardener, but I just like to pick, and I always say that I can pick anything I want in the garden, but this ongoing joke with me and my husband is he can't tell, he's not allowed to be able to, he says I can pick from the garden, and he is the gardener, but he doesn't want to know where I've picked from, in the sense of he didn't want me to pick all the chive heads out of the patch that was, you know, this big, because of course he's growing the garden and it's his garden, it's his baby, he's noticing the changes, and he is growing the garden primarily for wildlife. So it's, you know, the two things can work together. But having got my 4 chives here, you know, the floristry does come into it, because I can see I've got 4 chives that are different sizes. So that's the fullest in size, that's the second, and I've even got the 3rd and 4th. So what I'll be doing when I look at my chives is just mentally lining them up from biggest to smallest, and then I will place those accordingly into my arrangement. So conventionally the larger flower goes low down, and the smaller stuff sort of progressively washes out to the outer edges. So with all the other flowers I've used, I've talked to you about how great the fragrance is. The chives smell like onions, so probably something you wouldn't want to put into a bridal bouquet. And I guess if I could do, I keep all my offcuts and add them into a salad, but I wouldn't suggest you confuse your flower arrangements with your eating, especially if you've got younger children in the house. You don't want to be setting the example that you're actually eating your flower arrangements, just in the case that opportunity comes when you've got something, you know, that's inedible in your arrangement, berries and things like that, which would be very harmful. So I'm being adult about this. I'm using foodstuffs, but I won't be eating. So I will spin this round in a minute. Now look at that. I don't know if you can see. I'm going with the sweep. Oh, mind you, my sweep up is here. I think I'm going to move that round. If that chive wants to sweep up, I think I'm going to put it on the half. Oh, now it wants to turn down. Right, staying up on one side and turning down on the other. I'm just going to move those over to embrace the sweeping up. And I'm replacing that second chive, and now I'm discovering that although I have got lots of skinny materials in, the chicken wire is starting to get a bit clogged. You know, I've got so much material in now, it's starting to, you know, in case of can I wiggle this down and fix it to where I want it to go. Can you hear the birds? Having a right old talk. There was a wren sitting on the, actually it was sitting on my bunting. I think you might be able to see some of my bunting hanging down here. It was sitting on the bunting as if it was a little washing line. So the chives going in there. And then on the other side, I've picked these buttercups, as I've already shown you, but again, I've picked them for practice. I've heard that buttercups last reasonably well in a vase, and I thought, well, I don't want to just trust that advice. I want to give it a go myself. So I've got this sort of diagonal sweep of greens, I might try and keep them quite long, so I've got this sort of hovering section up above. So it doesn't always have to be cut down to size. And what I'll do is I'll, when I finish filming, I will tidy away. I will move this very carefully indoors, and then I will look at it against the plain background of my dining room walls, and I think, oh, is that all right? And again, I will. If I don't like it, I'll pinch something, I'll cut something out, or I'll move it. And I think that's part of the pleasure of the arranging. It's not a static flower arrangement. It might not look really, exactly as you wanted to do first time, but I quite like that going back. And then sometimes you'll notice an obvious hole, like I can see here. There is one leaf on the lemon balm that is a bit holy. I can take that out now because I've got so much other stuff going on. I kind of don't need the leaf because there's loads of other green, and that has got, these were upright this morning, so perhaps they are going to droop a little bit or arch delicately. I think I will put this underneath the rosemary and just work with the fact that it wants to sit down low. I'm going to move that one just a little bit further in, delve down and aim it into the water. So I think probably that is my arrangement done. So I've called it an arrangement of herbs in a natural style. And it's given me pleasure for spending nearly an hour with you talking about flower arranging. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, do leave me a comment. If you decide to make your own herb arrangement, I would love to see a photograph, and the best way you can get that to me is to post it into my Facebook group, Flower Start World. You can either search for it on Facebook or follow the link underneath the video. And as I say, if you've got a like-minded friend who enjoys being in the garden, flower arranging, all those kinds of things, why don't you share this video with them, and we can help grow our flower arranging community. So I'm going to say goodbye, do a little bit of a clean up. It's my turn to cook the tea tonight, so it's Operation Homemaker any minute now. I might have a cup of tea first of all and sit out and enjoy this lovely bird song and the beautiful early evening sunshine. So I shall see you again next week, same time, same place. So don't forget, Facebook Live, noon on Friday, pre-recorded video on Monday at 5 o'clock my time, and then live again here on Tuesday at 4:30. And if you're interested in joining my membership group and you don't quite know what it's about, let me know in the comments and I can message you some more details. But we're doing a practice class just so I can run through the tech. That's at 3 o'clock on Friday, and then the sort of first launching class in the membership group is on Wednesday the 7th of June at 2:30 p.m. my time. So perhaps in the comments as well, if you're watching from overseas, let me know what time of the day you're watching this video. So I should say goodbye and catch up with you next time.